thank you, Stacey Abrams, for the work you have done. And I want to thank, of course, Lucy McBath. We got to get her reelected. Boy, there's Lucy. We talked about Lucy. You know, when you all elected Lucy McBath, that made a real statement about who we are as America. That was a real statement about who Georgia is as a state. That was a huge statement about who the South is. All of that happened when you sent Lucy McBath to the United States Congress. So let's make sure we send her back. I see Hank Johnson over there, Congressman Hank Johnson. I want to thank him for your longstanding friendship. You know, Lucy and Hank and I serve in the Congressional Black Caucus together, and I see these guys when they are in the room with no cameras, and I see them when the cameras are on, and they're always the same person fighting for the people of Georgia and working families of Georgia. And I want to thank you both for your friendship and all the support you've been giving Joe and me. Thank you. Carolyn Boudreaux, where are you? Where is she? We got to make sure, there you are. We got to send you to the United States Congress, right, Georgia? And John also, I'm going to be with him today. I don't know if he's out here yet, but we got to send him to the United States Senate. We got to take back the majority in the United States Senate. His name is pronounced John. I want to thank, of course, the Democratic Party Chair, Nikema Williams, who is also going to go. There she is, in that great, great tradition of our dear, dear, now ancestor and hero, John Lewis. Nikema, we're all so proud of you. And Leslie Palomino, who introduced me, and Stacey said it, really just a voice about who we are again as a country and our future. When I look at her and so many of our young leaders, I know our future is bright. So I'm back in Georgia. We got 2 days to go. And I came back to Georgia because I wanted to just remind everybody that that something's happening over there. Okay. Right, there we go. We don't want it to fall. You all are going to decide who's going to be the next president of the United States. You are. You're going to decide who's going to be the next president of the United States. And so I am back in Georgia to thank you for all you've been doing these years and these months and these weeks and these days. Look at the kind of turnout we've already seen in terms of early voting. And I just wanted to come back to remind us that we still have a ways to go. And you know, that last leg of a long trip is usually the longest and the most important. And so this is not the time to let up. This is the time to put our feet on that pedal and go and get this thing done and make sure everyone votes, that they drop off their ballots in drop boxes now. Don't put it in the mailbox, put it in a drop box, or vote on election day, because there's so much at stake. You know, we are in the middle of at least 4 crises. Joe and I talk about that all the time. The first 2, a pandemic. You know, and I'm just going to come down here. How about that? Let's just avoid a catastrophe, shall we? Okay. So we are in the middle of a few crises. And for all of the friends in the cars, I'm thinking of you. I'm looking at you even if you can't see me. So there we go. There we go. So we're in the middle of 4 crises taking place at the same time. We are in the midst of a public health crisis of a proportion we've never seen. It's probably one of the greatest mass casualty events we have experienced as a country since World War II. Over 225,000 people have died in just the last several months. Many whom tragically, for their last days on earth, weren't even able to be with the people they love, to hold their hands, because of the nature of this virus. 9 million people have contracted the virus with untold long-term health consequences. Doctors are talking about things like lung scarring. And the thing is, it didn't have to be this way. It didn't have to be this bad. Thanks to a fellow by the name of Bob Woodward, we know that on January 28th, Donald Trump was informed about the seriousness of this. He was told it is 5 times as deadly as the flu. He was told it can impact people of every age. He was told it is airborne. And what did he do? He covered that information up. He suggested that this was a hoax. He minimized the seriousness of this. He lied to the American people. And this is now where we are. And on top of it, he has the gall to be in court with his boy Bill Barr trying to sue to get rid of the Affordable Care Act that President Obama and Vice President Joe Biden passed that brought health care to over 20 million people that didn't have it. That for the first time gave protections to people with pre-existing conditions. Honk if you know somebody with diabetes. Honk if you know somebody with high blood pressure, with lupus, surviving breast cancer. And they want to take it away. They want to sue to get rid of it. So you have that on the one hand. On the other hand, you have Joe Biden. Joe Biden, who says, we need to expand Obamacare. We need to expand it to the point we bring down the cost of prescription drugs, bring down the cost of premiums, bring down the age of Medicare eligibility to age 60. Joe Biden, who says, we understand that when we're talking about health care, the body doesn't just start from the neck down, it includes the neck up, and that's called mental health care. There's a very clear choice in this election. Let's look at the crises that we are facing in terms of this economic crisis. Over 30 million people filed for unemployment in just the last several months. Here in Georgia, 1 in 8 households is describing a member of their household, if not the entire household, as being hungry. Here in Georgia, 1 in 5 households is describing an inability or a concern about their ability to pay rent. Here in Georgia, 1 in 4 small businesses has gone out of business, potentially never able to reopen. And again, Georgia, there's a real clear difference. On the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who on the subject of the economy, when asked about it, how's the economy doing? What Joe says is, well, you tell me, how are working people doing? How are working families doing? Joe says, we need to deal with the fact that you want to talk about the economy, then let's not ever raise taxes on anybody making less than $400,000 a year. We will also bring down the middle class tax rate. We will also pass a bill that allows people to have a $15,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers for down payment and closing costs. Joe says no working family should pay more than 7% of their income in child care. There's a real difference here. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who when asked about the economy, asks about the stock market, asks about rich people, passes as one of his first orders of business a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America, to the point that we are all now going to have to deal with a $2 trillion deficit. Well, Georgia, if we do our thing, these next 2 days, and God willing get elected, Joe and I are about to get rid of that tax cut and invest that money in working families Invest that money on building up our infrastructure, our roads and our bridges and renewable energy. We're about to invest that money in our students coming from homes that make less than $125,000 to say, if you are coming from such a home, you will pay nothing for a 4-year college or an HBCU, private or public. We will invest that money in our college graduates who have student loan debt if they take on a job in public service or a job that pays less than $125,000 and erase their debt. We will invest in the American worker and the American family. Georgia, there's a clear choice in this election. A clear choice. In the midst of it all, we are also having a long overdue reckoning on racial injustice in America. Joe Biden, a student of America's history, someone who has the courage to speak truth, has the courage to speak the phrase, Black Lives Matter. Joe Biden says, let's deal with it. Deal with the history that has resulted in stark disparities based on race in our healthcare system, in our criminal justice system, wealth disparities, educational disparities. Joe says, let's deal with that on criminal justice. We will decriminalize marijuana and expunge the records of people who have been convicted for marijuana offenses. We will shut down private prisons. We will end the cash bail system, which is not only a criminal justice issue, but an economic justice issue. We will require reform of policing. We will ban chokeholds and carotid holds because George Floyd would be alive today if that were the case. We will require a national registry of police officers who break the law because it shouldn't be that you get fired in one place and then get to go to another place and get hired there. Joe says, let's deal with the racial disparities in our healthcare system when we see that blacks and Latinos are 3 times as likely to contract COVID and twice as likely to die from it. When we see that our Native American brothers and sisters have the highest rates of diabetes of any population in our country. When black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in connection with childbirth than other women. Joe says, let's deal with that. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who at that debate, you all remember that first debate? At that debate, refused to condemn white supremacists, and then didn't stop there. He doubled down and said, stand back and stand by. In Georgia, here's the thing. It's not like it was a one-off. Don't forget, when he was running for office and thinking about his political career, he had the gall to question the legitimacy of America's first black president. Don't forget on Charlottesville, where folks were peacefully protesting racial injustice. A young woman was killed. And on the other side, there was a group of neo-Nazis wearing swastikas, carrying tiki torches, spewing racial and anti-Semitic epithets. And the President of the United States said there were fine people on each side. A president of the United States who called Mexicans criminals and rapists, who as his first order of business, put in place a Muslim ban. Georgia, we are better than this. We deserve better than this. We want a president who understands that regardless of where you live, your race, your gender, your age, the language your grandmother speaks, that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. America knows we need a leader like Joe Biden who understands the importance of bringing folks together, who understands that the real measure of a person's strength is not based on who you beat down, it's based on who you lift up. We have a real clear choice in this election in terms of the future of our country. Not to mention the crisis that we are facing, which is the climate crisis. Now, y'all know I come from California, but the West Coast is burning. From California up through Oregon, Washington, over to Colorado, wildfires. I've met with families that have been evacuated, never to return to their homes. I've met with firefighters who were fighting the fires while their own homes were burning. In fact, my brother-in-law is a firefighter. On the Gulf Coast states, the neighbors to here, right? We've had 5 named storms just this year. And you know, you name a storm because it's that big. In the Midwest, floods that have caused farmers to lose a whole season of crops. So Joe Biden says, hey, we need to deal with the reality of this, the urgency of this. The clock is ticking. We need to have timelines like net zero emissions by 2050. We need to invest in renewable energies and wind turbines and solar paneling. And let us understand this is about the creation of jobs, millions of jobs. This is also about equity and civil rights when you look at the fact that in all of the poor air quality districts in our country, 70% of the residents of those places are people of color. Joe understands that. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who, I kid you not, so he was asked about the wildfires in California. And the question went something like, so there's, you know, the scientists are telling us that there's human behaviors that are contributing to these extreme weather conditions and the wildfires. The President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States, responded by saying, science doesn't know. What is that? Well, here's the thing, Mr. President. Science does know, and so does the leading scientific magazine that endorsed Joe Biden for President of the United States. So everything is at stake. And that brings me to today and this vote. So by virtue of us all being here together, this is a group of leaders. This is a group of leaders. And so, like you, I have been asked by folks, why should I vote? And I believe there are 3 reasons. 1, let's honor the ancestors. Honor the ancestors. And Georgia, for you, this is a particular point of pride in that most incredible now ancestor who was a great American hero by the name of Congressman John Lewis. And what we know he did in shedding blood on that Edmund Pettus Bridge. Got arrested 40 times, got in good trouble, told us to get in good trouble. And you know the thing about John, and Lucy knows this, he was an extraordinary human being. And John also understood that the fight for voting rights is an extension, obviously, of our fight for civil rights. John was front and center on every civil rights fight, by the way. John was front and center on the fight for marriage equality. John was on the front and center fight for Dreamers and DACA and fairness and justice for all people. So this is a moment to honor the ancestors. That's a reason to vote. To honor the fact we just celebrated the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. All those suffragettes in their white marching and shouting for a woman's right to vote. And of course, while we remember history, we must remember it accurately. Black women couldn't vote until 1965. So we still have work to do. Reason number one, honor the ancestors. Reason number two, everything is at stake. Everything is at stake. We have talked about so many issues. Let's talk about a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. Let's talk about renewing the protections for DACA. Let's talk about pay equity and what we need to do to make sure that all people, and that means women, get paid equal for equal work. Everything is at stake. Reason number three, and this brings me back to where I started talking about the work of Stacey Abrams, which is this. I've been traveling the country again. I've now come to Georgia many times. I was in Florida. I was in Texas yesterday and Florida. I'll be in Pennsylvania. I was in Michigan, North Carolina. I'm going there after I leave here. All over the country. Okay, what I don't need to tell Georgia, but I will just remind us all over this country, and in particular in recent history since 2013 when the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act. Almost 24 states put in place laws that were designed to make it difficult for us to vote. You know, here in Georgia, they were purging the voter rolls. We have seen in Texas how they were picking up drop boxes. You know, they put a thing in Texas, 1 drop box per county. I was in Harris County, where Houston is. 4 million people live there. They have 1 drop box. In states where they're saying, well, if you do a mail-in ballot, you got to fill out your ballot, then put it in 1 envelope, and then you're supposed to seal that and then put it in another envelope, and you got to be sure you sign it here, but then in some places you got to be sure somebody else signs it. Trying to make it difficult. Trying to confuse people. They were even messing with the post office. The post office. I mean, the nicest people work for the post office. And so we've got to ask, why do you think so many powerful people are trying to make it so difficult for us to vote? And I do believe the answer is because they know our power. They know our power. They know when we vote, things change. They know when we vote, we win. And so let us not ever let anybody take our power from us. It is ours. And election time, the power of our voice is through our vote, and we will not be deterred. We will not be sidelined. We will not be silenced. And here's my last point. Here's my last point. This moment will pass. And years from now, our children, our grandchildren, and others, they will look in our eyes, each one of us, and they will ask us, where were you at that moment? And what we will tell them is so much more than just how we felt. We will tell them what we did. We will tell them about this particular Sunday afternoon when we were hanging out in a parking lot together. We will tell them how we organized and mobilized. We will tell them how we called and we texted everybody we knew to the point that they got tired of us, but we knew they would get over it. And we will tell them we elected Joe Biden, the next president of the